You are tuned into Outside the Box. I'm your host, Margot, and this is the continuation of Episode 7, Part 3 of Unholy Religion. Abuse can have long-term effects on the brain, including brain structure, brain function, chemistry, and development. Damage to certain areas of the brain can cause adverse reactions, such as making it difficult to process emotions, affects behavior, emotional perception, and balance. In some cases, making it harder to have a reaction in stressful situations. Hans B. Smith was born into a family with a long history of mental illness. Unfortunately, his genetic makeup had a negative effect on his thought process and brain function. But from early childhood, Hans was subjected to regular beatings and often witnessed his father physically abuse his mother. These are all key factors that created one of the most evil people in history. In his early childhood, Hans began exploring his sexuality. For a child of his age, bisexual promiscuity was abnormal and an introduction to his sadistic lifestyle. Hans had a fascination with drinking blood and dismembering animals. It wasn't just a fascination. Hans acted on his demented thoughts and cravings for blood. According to his relatives, Hans beheaded 2 geese and kept the severed heads in his pocket. He also frequented the slaughterhouse and would watch the death and dissection of farm animals. Hans found himself following in his mother's footsteps, becoming a devout Roman Catholic. Entranced by Roman Catholic rituals, Hans often reenacted the rituals with homemade altars, and he pretended to be the priest. Before Hans was even old enough to understand the true meaning of religion, he was already desecrating the word of Christ, a sacrilege of faith. Despite Hans's sexual preference and psychopathic tendencies, in 1904, at the age of 25, he was ordained in Germany. He would spend the next 4 years in service. But with numerous disputes with higher-ups, this led to many relocations for Father Hans. In 1908, Father Hans was transferred to St. John's Parish in Louisville, Kentucky, and then later forced to relocate to St. Boniface Church on the east side of Manhattan. This is where he met an Austrian housekeeper by the name of Anna Müller. But little did she know this would be the beginning of the end of her life. Once the church found out about the affair, Hans again was relocated to St. Joseph's in West Harlem. Hans Smith's irrational behavior and inability to distinguish between right and wrong led him to marry Anna February 26, 1923, in a secret ceremony that he performed himself. It's no doubt that Father Hans had no regards for his faith and the vow he had taken upon becoming a priest. It's no secret that Catholic priests are banned from marriage and let alone to have sexual affairs. That same year, Anna informs Hans that she is pregnant. Hans' sick infatuation with being a priest was far too important than Anna and their unborn child. Hans knew that if this news became public, his days of being a priest would be over. This is when their secret came to a gruesome end. September 2nd, Father Hans slashed Anna's throat with a 12-inch butcher knife in her uptown Manhattan apartment. He then sawed off her head with a hook saw and then sawed her body in half, wrapped each part of her upper body in newspaper, and put the lower part of her body in a pillowcase. To make sure Anna's body stayed submerged in the Hudson River, Hans attached schist rock to Anna's remains. 3 days later, 2 kids stumbled upon the upper torso of a woman. 3 miles down the river in New Jersey, the rest of her body was found, still wrapped in the pillowcase with the schist rock tied to it. Even though the body was found, it was the type of rock that gave detectives their lead. This particular rock was not to be found or never seen in New Jersey. The autopsy of the body parts gave them the basics: her age, height, weight, and gender, the usual. But what they didn't know is that Anna had prematurely gave birth to her baby shortly before she was murdered. Obviously, the NYPD needed to solve this case, so they turned to the next piece of evidence, which was the monogram pillowcase, which was then traced back to the company that kept detailed business records, which led to Anna's apartment. I'm sure the NYPD wasn't prepared for what was about to happen. The landlord told the officers that Mr. Hans Smith rented the apartment for a female relative, which we know now is his wife. The apartment was still a bloody murder scene. The walls and floor were spotted with Anna's blood. After searching the apartment, they found both weapons, clean of course, hidden in a trunk. In another storage space, they found letters addressed to Anna, which has Hans' place of employment, which was at St. Joseph's. Once the police arrived at St. Joseph's and began to question Father Hans, he immediately confessed to the murder. I loved her. Sacrifices should be consummated in blood. And these are the words of Hans Smit. From that statement alone, let police know that Father Hans Smit was bloodthirsty and not fit for society. Hans's trial began December 7, 1913. His lawyer claimed he was overwhelmed with bloodlust and he was too insane to know right from wrong. Hans got his way and pled insanity. The jury convicted Hans of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to death to the electric chair, making him the very first priest in history to ever be executed. Hans was put to rest February 18, 1916, in New York's Sing Sing prison. It was unfortunate that some of Hans's earlier victims didn't truly get their justice that they deserved. Evidence hadn't surfaced until after his execution. Previously unsolved crimes that were linked to Father Hans, but church leaders kept him from facing any real consequences, which is extremely common in the Catholic community. If you tuned into my previous videos, then you would be aware of this. It's common that they cover up for their members and parishioners and clergymen and women. Investigators found a second apartment in Hans's name. There they found a printing press that churned out $10 bills, which are equivalent to $240 in today's money. Allegedly, Hans had been working with a partner, a Manhattan dentist, to commit a string of murders and make off with the life insurance policies. In addition to his fraudulent activities, the body of a 9-year-old was found dismembered similar to his wife's Anna's at St. John's Parishes, Hans' first place of employment. Unfortunately, a janitor was charged with his murder. Even farther back in Hans's wicked history, German police traced evidence of another murdered girl in Hans's hometown. But due to his consistent relocation and execution, the case went cold. Thank you for watching. You are tuned into Outside the Box. Like and subscribe. Stay safe and informed.